It doesn't take more than a flick of the channel to realize what's going on in France. With all the unrest, everybody has a take. Everybody has something to say. In the name of free speech, of course. So today, we're in Toronto to ask people what the difference is and where they draw the line between free speech and hate speech.
And I've been to France many times. I've lived there for years, and I just think that they're also really instigating. Like the French, after that civics teacher was beheaded, they went out into the streets, and I understand taking power, but then they put that, cartoon back into the streets to, I think it's like a provocation. And it's not really all that different from using the N-word in terms of parallel. And yet they want to provoke, and they don't want to respect sort of the boundaries of that. For the Prophet Muhammad to be treated in this way and shown in this way is very offensive.
Where free speech kind of end, and where does hate speech kind of start?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I think that there really is a difference between the way Canadians see free speech and French people see free speech. I think in Canada, the way, at least for me, that free speech exists is that the idea that your free speech stops when it starts to impede on someone else's free speech. I think that goes greater. It's kind of freedoms in general. Your freedoms stop at the point that it impedes on someone else's freedoms.
It's a shame that these Muslims are going out and committing these heinous crimes, and that too, young Muslims. I think the one in the Nice attack, he was 18, and so it's just really, it's a sad state indeed. When the ink of a pen flows freely, it can do both things. It can strike life into nations, and it can also cut deeper than swords.
I just think that everybody worldwide right now is just so overloaded with bad news and sadness, and it's just such a low time in history completely that people I think they're kind of losing it a little bit. I think they are not thinking of the consequences of what they do and how it's affecting everybody else.
I think in France there's a different view, because in France the French identity supersedes everything. Being French is the most important thing. So anything that any sort of speech that would contradict what is seen as the French identity is stopped. I think that there's the idea that you have to kind of fit in the line with what the French identity is, and so the French politicians, French public in general, is much more willing to say things that would maybe be considered controversial in Canada.
Like, I'm not sure if you've ever been to Paris, but I've been to Paris. Like, the districts is just, the very, very poor areas are all Algerians, and just put them in there. And there's no integration. It's a very us and them mentality. So trying to offend them as much as possible, it puts them away from what being French is. Being a French person is being white, it's being Christian. And that's the French mentality, which is not a good mentality to have.
When we stop being interested in understanding what is not familiar to us, then we don't respect it.
Islam, as you know, does not stand for any of this. It does not stand for extremism, terrorism, and in fact, the head of the Ahmadi Muslim community just yesterday condemned these attacks in the strongest of terms, and he said that we don't stand for such terrorism and extremism.
Islam in and of itself in its pure form is not a religion of violence. I don't think any religion that exists today is. But I think introspection needs to be done about particular individuals that would maybe try to promote violence within the context of a religion.
So free speech, you want to try and question every kind of value and belief you have.
Right.
Hate speech is when you're just doing it to put someone down. If it's derogatory, any kind of bad way, you want to kind of stop that as much as you can. That's kind of where I draw the line. If you're just trying to question someone based on your negative beliefs and your biases, then it's hate speech for me.
Coming to Toronto on a random October morning and talking to 4 people, all 4 of them have either lived in France, have been to France multiple times, or have some sort of affiliation with that country. So perhaps this topic of free speech and hate speech hits closer to home than we initially expected it. So perhaps the trick to this colossal balancing act isn't about policing the tongue as much as it is about training the heart and taming the mind. Because expressions can be policed, but thoughts cannot.